What's up, guys? Nolan here, and today we got our second dev diary breaking down the US Airborne Spec for Broken Arrow. A couple things that stand out would be the lack of F-22s, B-2s, B-52s, and hell, even F-16s. And we had a bit of a sit down with the devs after the release of today's devlog where they answered some of our questions, one of which being all of those planes that I just listed there are, quote, somewhere else. So there is going to be another air-focused specialization, or at least that's where these will be somewhere. We just don't know what specifically that is yet. The possibilities are a bit scattered, but in my opinion, they are either in an Air Force tab, which is going to be a specific Air Force spec like we have for Armored, which you'll see for today. This airborne deck is more like an air assault deck. More on that later, though. Or they're in the Special Forces spec, which I guess makes sense because these are special planes. These are special units, so maybe they're considered Special Forces. We'll have to wait and see. But again, I am speculating that it's possible that these planes will be so powerful that they've decided to balance them by putting them in an Air Force deck that will have limited ground capability, just like some of the Special Forces and lighter transports will have, to be balanced a bit. What's also possible is they've added them to a Special Forces deck, which will include the Rangers, SEALs, stealth aircraft in the same place for a more balanced combination. However, you will for sure have some decision to make on what to spend that money on. I fully believe either is possible, with the only response I've seen so far being it won't make sense, but it makes complete sense to have specs missing certain categories because they already do. Both armored specs have no air units as of the last beta, so they could do the same here, just flipped. The B1 is included in this airborne spec, and it will have a nuclear bomb, the devs told us. So it will drop a nuclear bomb that cannot be intercepted. However, the plane itself, of course, can be. What's interesting about the B1, though, is that it can go supersonic and it can fly nap of the Earth. So the devs confirmed we will be able to fly nap of the Earth very fast and then drop the bomb. However, like all other planes with normal bombs, especially with a nuke, the plane will have to get to its height before dropping it, and it will have a very wide turn radius to actually survive and get out of there. So what's interesting here is the Russians will have a nuclear cruise missile that it will be able to call in, launch the missile, then have the plane evac. The missile can be intercepted, but the plane will very likely survive every time if you're doing it correctly. The B1 can go low and fast in and drop the bomb, but the plane can be intercepted and is also at a very high risk of being shot down after it actually drops the bomb. The devs did this purposely for testing purposes to see how both options work for balance. As it stands right now, it is highly likely that the US will be dropping successful nukes, but paying for it. So high risk, high probability, while the Russians have low risk, low probability option. If Russians can saturate US air defenses, they'll have the cheapest nukes, for sure. It's still a mystery what new spec the Russians will get next week, but like I mentioned last week, I'm guessing it's either Marine or support. Well, I hope it's support, but leaning more Marine at this rate for testing purposes if they're going to keep them even. With all this air power that you're about to see for this American Airborne on top of what we already know is coming with the Marine from last week, it's pretty crazy. So I hope there's a lot they're able to do with that deck that will, or the spec that we'll hear about next week, that's going to be able to knock some of the stuff out of the air, or at least help knock the stuff out of the air. Now for the US Airborne spec itself, I'll link the devlog below if you want to read through. It's quite a lot of text here, but I'm going to skim through the big stuff. The specialty of this deck is speed and lethality at the cost of resilience, according to the devs. You won't find any armor here, and as I mentioned, there is some things missing that you would have assumed be included in an airborne deck. This is more like an air assault deck, in my opinion. Quickly rush a position and count on something else to actually hold it. You can pair this up with either armored or marine, where the tanks and vehicles can help hold whatever you've got. The duality of this spec being quick rush, recon, and air power, combined with the breakthrough power of armored, will be really good. I'm going to try that one pretty quickly. However, you will have less points available in the vehicle tab than if you did armored marine. Then you have the option of airborne marine, and you'll be an absolute powerhouse in the air, and your infantry will be very strong. It's a really cool dynamic there. The unique units include fancy Humvees for transportation and fire support. There's a mixed bag of thermal imaging, 50 cals, Mark 19s, and tow missiles with TOW-2Bs. They also have smoke for concealment. You get the Army sniper teams that have the new sniper rifles and DMRs that ignore all or half, respectively, of buildings cover. The 50 cal will, of course, have a great range. If you come against small teams of infantry and light vehicles, they will chew them up quickly. The US gets its first drones with the Gray Eagle and Global Hawk. The Eagle can hold Hellfires, Griffins, and Stingers, while being able to get low down to the ground. The Global Hawk has, quote, exceptionally long-range optics while having to stay high, so if you're careful with it, you'll be annoying the enemy enough to make them come after it with a plane. Airborne Infantry with SIG Spears and M250s, meaning longer range than the 5.56 squads. They also have 2 grenade launchers and AT4s. These might be one of the best infantry squads in the game. We'll have to see how they do. There's lots of weapon teams that you got squads of 8 with both 240s and javelins, tow teams, stinger teams, 50 cal teams, and Mark 19 teams, all with 4 members of each team. The assortment of small but powerful squads will be annoying to the enemy and cause them to overspend in order to deal with them when used correctly, according to the devs. But yeah, I can see that happening. You spread out a bunch of these guys, they can pretty much handle anything, but can't take much of a hit back. Humvees can only carry teams of 4, while the open-top M13 can carry squads. I'm assuming the MTV and LMTV can carry squads or multiple squads as well. We get the M8 AGS in this spec, where it can get a fast-firing 105mm or a fully decked-out 120mm, quote, as powerful as the most modern Abrams. It also has APS, but don't expect this thing to be able to take much of a beating. All those Russian autocannons are going to eat this thing up. You can put some better armor on it, but then that means you can't airdrop it, so it depends. There's also a M551 Sheridan with a 152mm cannon and AT missiles that can be airdropped as well as transported by King Stallions from the Marine deck for sneaky plays. For AA, you get the Avenger, which can carry 8 Stingers and can also be airdropped unless it's up armored. We got the Slam Ram, which is an MTV with AMRAMs strapped to the back of it. You can also bring 4 AMRAMs and 2 Sidewinders if you want. The AMRAMs can apparently intercept missiles, but not helicopters, I guess, so that's what the Sidewinders are for. The Hawkeye is a Humvee with a 105mm howitzer strapped to the back that can shoot RAP, cluster, or HE. The Brutus is a MTV with a M777 trapped to the back of it, shooting HE and cluster. First up for helicopters, we got the Blackhawk, which can carry 12 infantry along with a load of cargo, as well as slinging a Humvee or smaller vehicle to the bottom. The Apache and the Apache Longbow are here. We all know what's up. Sturdy build, 30mm chain gun, 4 pylons for rockets, including APKWS, guided, and of course, Hellfires. Only the Longbow can fire the fire and forget version of the Hellfire, though, apparently. I would imagine that the view distance or the recon distance, the visual distance, is also pretty significant on this one as well. The Chinook is in there for heavy cargo needs. It can also carry some smaller vehicles. They added the Kiowa, which is pretty cool. It can carry Hellfires, APKWS, Stingers, or GAU-21s, along with a recon mast, drastically increasing its detection range and allowing it to laser designate targets. For planes, we got the F-15C, E, and EX. The C is the ASF dedicated version with up to 8 AMRAMs and can put fuel tanks on there to keep it flying. This will be important for air defense as those nukes will be around every game, I imagine. The E is the Strike Eagle. It can carry 4 AMRAMs, but can also sling 7 2,000-pound JDAMs or 18 clusters, and it can laze its own targets. Now, the F-15EX, aka the Sex Eagle, is crazy as it's literally both of those two combined. The EX can carry up to 14,000 pounds of bombs as well as 8 AMRAMs. It can also carry JASSM cruise missiles, AGM-88 seed missiles, and more. You can also decide to spam ram if you want, loading it with 20 AMRAMs. Again, very useful for stopping those nukes and for saturation attacks, but that has to be insanely expensive. Not to mention, with something like that, if you choose to go all AMRAMs, that means that you can't use those cruise missiles or anything else, because even though we can't have 2 airframes or 2 types of a unit, we still can't diversify that one unit. So I can't have both of my EXs in the game where one has a full ground loadout and one has a full air loadout. It's either one or the other, just like the last beta. The C-17 is your heavy airdrop. The C-130 is a lighter airdrop that can hug the ground. The B-1 Lancer is your nuker. Literally, it carries nukes on top of the ability to carry insane amounts of whatever else you want, like 24 2,000 pounders, 12 JSOWs, 8 ALCMs, or 24 JASSM cruise missiles. It can also carry 84 drag bombs and 30 cluster bombs that it can drop at low altitude. As mentioned earlier, this thing can go supersonic and fly nap of the earth while doing it, but can only drop the drag bombs at that height. Everything else, it will need to get up to altitude first to drop it. So again, the air war is going to be on for sure now in this next test starting on November 12th. Next Friday, they already told us that we will be getting a breakdown of the new Russian Specialization. That's what we're going to call it now, Specialization. We'll see if it ends up being Marine or support or maybe even mechanized. That's all for now though, guys. See you next week. Unless you want to follow me on any of these other channels here. We got some big Star Citizen news coming up today, tomorrow, and the next day. You can also follow me on Twitter or join the Discord, both linked below. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a nice day. See you guys.